Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the Virtual Crate Podcast. I am your host, John Burkhart. Welcome. People have been asking me what this podcast is really about, and to be quite honest, it's about me being able to talk about the things that I want to talk about, which really is just movies, TV, music, some video games. I like a lot of nerdy stuff. I guess I don't really like the term nerdy. You know, it's just we throw it around a lot these days. Everything's nerdy, but it's really just I like things that some other people don't like, or some other people do like. Music gear. My buddy Pat and I like music gear. We talk about music gear. I like movies. I'll talk about movies, talk about TV, talk about video games. So let's do this, guys. Let's do this. Let's have some conversations. Feel free to leave comments and join in the conversation. I'd like to hear what other people think about some of these things. But anyways, we'll start off by kind of exploring what this show's about. This particular episode is a little bit different than how I envision future episodes going, but maybe we'll be back to this. Who knows? I have plans on bringing some other guests in here to talk about movies and, you know, all kinds of stuff all kinds of media that we consume. So today's really, I wanted to do, well, it's a new year. All right. It's 2020 and we just passed another decade. So I wanted to talk about some of the stuff from this past decade that, I liked. So these are going to be top 10 lists for both, my top 10 movies of the decade and the top 10 records of the decade. So we'll do movies first and take a little commercial break and then come back for my top 10 records of the decade. And I'm going to preface this by saying these aren't, this is my personal top 10 of movies and the records of the decade. This isn't an argument of what film's better or what record's better. These are things that got me through the last decade. These are things that I watched or listened to a lot. And I mean, you might laugh at some of them, whatever. I don't really care. 'Cause you know what? I like what I like. So let's get into it. Let's start with the top 10 movies of the decade. So for me, starting at number 10, I have Kubo and the Two Strings. I like animated stuff. I like animation. I like seeing different types of animation, and at this point in my life, I like seeing if I can pull some of it off myself, doing some of my own animations. And I've dabbled in a little bit of it. But this one is a stop motion animation, which is something I am fascinated by. I love watching stop motions. I've made a couple of stop motions, I guess. It's very time consuming and can be a little difficult. Anyways, Kubo and the Two Strings is just a really great story about a kid kind of trying to find himself, and it's about family and, kind of standard family film themes. But it's told really well. Again, for me, it's mostly the stop motion that really just captures my attention. So yeah, I have that as my top 10. My number 9 is kind of a funny movie. It's Nice Guys with Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. Both playing different ends of law enforcement. One's a kind of a buffoon detective, and the other one's kind of an enforcer type who should be a detective. And they team up to solve some case. But it's I don't know. I don't think I'd seen a movie. I like Ryan Gosling, but I don't think I'd seen a movie where he was really played this kind of a character. Maybe I've missed something in the past, and again, I haven't seen every movie that exists, so take that into account when you're hearing my list, as well as I haven't watched every movie, so there's gonna be stuff that's left out. And with that being said, I haven't seen every Ryan Gosling movie, and I think that this movie changed my opinion on him. And it's really just kind of a fun, just kind of a romp detective movie. It has a little bit of the like kind of Big Lebowski vibe to it. So if you're looking for kind of I guess it would be like a subtle dark humor kind of comedy, but this has a little bit more slapsticky elements to it. Not a lot, just enough that make it really entertaining. So number 9, I have Nice Guys. At number 8, I have a pretty recent release, Jojo Rabbit, and I'm a fan of director Taika Waititi. I think he pops up and stuff. I think he's a pretty funny actor, and his vision as a creative is something that I respond to a lot. I've seen him talk about, there's a TED Talks that I've listened to that's just, it's one of my favorites. It's kind of just inspiring people to be more creative by explaining his process a little bit. But it's kind of sad, I guess, that he's even had to say that it sucks that he's had to make a movie about why it's bad being a Nazi these days. But I wouldn't say that's I wouldn't say they beat you in the face with that message. It takes place in a time period, but for as serious as content as we're dealing with, he manages to make humor in like the darkest situations, and some of the relationships between some of the characters are just really, really strong, unique, and entertaining relationships. And I mean, I could pick any number of of people that the boy Jojo deals with in the movie, but to me, one of my favorites is his friend. What's his name? Porgy. I think his name's Porgy. Anyways, they're really funny. It's a powerful movie. It did some things I didn't expect at all. But it was executed well and meaningful, and particularly timely. It's, again, irritating that we have to have a movie about why being a Nazi is not good. But anyways, number 8 was Jojo Rabbit. Number 7 is a movie. I'm not always a huge whodunit type of moviegoer. I think I saw Clue when I was younger, and it's fine. It's a fun movie. I don't go out of my way for that kind of whodunit type mystery. And I know there's a lot of good ones out there, but again, I've missed some, probably a lot, and based from what I've seen in my free time with my ability to see the movies that I've seen, I'm gonna put Knives Out at number 7, because I feel like Rian Johnson does a really good job of taking classic ideas or tropes and modernizing them, really. And that's really what Knives Out is it feels like kind of an ensemble, old school whodunit, but with new twists. And I found it super entertaining. And when I think of that genre of movie, this is the one that I'm going to go to. This is the one that I'm going to rewatch again and again and again. And the cast in it's fantastic. Daniel Craig is just great. He's got this like Southern accent. He's this detective that's trying to figure out who killed this guy, who's I guess he's a thriller writer, author, and he dies, and they're trying to figure out who who killed him, between all of his family members, and there's just a lot of people in it. Toni Collette's in it, Chris Evans, Christopher Plummer. It's great cast, and I highly recommend it. And again, this is the go-to whodunit movie for me, as far as I'm concerned, from now on. Oh boy, we're gonna get into some we're getting into superhero genre mostly now. I apologize, but at the same time I don't, because number 6 I have Logan as number 6. The X-Men franchise under Fox has been okay. There's been some really good movies and some really not good movies. And the good movies are really good. I really enjoy Days of Future Past, but I think Logan really took not just the superhero genre. They took this Wolverine character into it. It's a Western. This is a Western movie. This is the the cantankerous old outlaw that has to do one last ride type deal. And we've been seeing it for a while. Particularly Marvel's done a really good job of taking different genres and making like a heist movie, but it's got Ant-Man in it, as opposed to like trying to make an Ant-Man movie and they do a heist in it. They made a heist movie with Ant-Man. And I think the fact that they have done such a good job that Fox was able to take, I'm stumbling over my words here. Marvel didn't create this, but they've done it very well. And so when Fox took this let's take this one character and let's make it a Western. Let's make this a Western with Wolverine in it. It's oh man, it's probably got some of the best Hugh Jackman and why am I forgetting his name? Wow, everyone's gonna hate me. Wow. Jean-Luc Picard himself, Professor X. Both of them, some of the top. Patrick Stewart, wow. Some of the best acting from both of them. I mean, they both are fantastic actors and have done a bit of really great work. There should have been some awards talk for their acting performances in that movie, but that's one that holds up for me, and that's one that I'm definitely gonna rewatch as the new decade passes. So number 6 we had Logan. Number 5, I really tried to separate the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I almost put the whole thing there as one movie, which kind of would have been a cheat. But there's a lot of great movies in there, and I'll tell you one of my honorable mentions is Captain America: Winter Soldier. That movie, I think, changes the narrative of the MCU, and it's also kind of an insane movie in my opinion for Disney to put out. It was kind of a not complete anti-government, but kind of just be aware movie. And I don't know. I might have been reading something that other people didn't see in that, but I thought it was a bold choice, but it didn't make this list. That being said, number 5 is the first Avengers movie. And the reason I have the first Avengers movie on here, there's two, I'll be honest, there's two MCU movies in here. The first Avengers for me is kind of the reason I am doing what I'm doing. I've always loved movies. I grew up loving going to the movie theater. We have a holiday tradition of going to the movies on Christmas. I always made my dad take me to movies when I'd see him on the weekends, things like that. But after a while, I started doing other things. Life kind of got in the way, and I didn't care about movies as much. I went and saw them, but I just didn't care as much. I was like, nah, cool, I saw this movie. And then in 2012, I was living in the Bay Area and working at a used bookstore right next to a comic book shop. And, I kind of started dipping my finger back into the comic book genre a little bit, just kind of seeing what was out there, talking to other comic book fans I had around me. And I just kind of started to get a little bit more excited. And then Avengers came out that year. And I think I walked to the theater to go see that movie like 6 or 7 times. I can't remember the exact number, but it was over 5 for sure. And that kind of reignited my love for movies. This is gonna sound really funny, but as a kid, I really liked the Val Kilmer Batman Forever, and it's not a great movie, but as a kid I really enjoyed it, and I remember walking out of the theater being like, well, this is really, really cool, I really like this one. And that's how those are the kind of feelings I had coming out of the first Avengers movie, where it was like, not only did they do an individual character well, but they did a team well. They built up something. And I mean, I don't want to regurgitate the same things that everybody said about that first Avengers, but they did it. They did something that I thought was impossible. And I mean, from there, Marvel just continued to build and grow. So number 5, I have the first Avengers movie. Number 4 is another animated movie. This whole thing with Spider-Man has been kind of a whirlwind. I never thought I'd see Spider-Man in the MCU, and then these battles back and forth between rights of we're going to take it back, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Well, regardless of whatever happens with the live action Spider-Man, which I do like Tom Holland. I think he's a good Spider-Man. He might be my favorite. No, he is my favorite, hands down. He's my favorite live action Spider-Man. But my number 4 is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and this movie is just fantastic from the story that they tell, which brings in multiple different spider people, different spider heroes. There we go. Different spider heroes. You get a multiverse of possibilities of Spider-Man. There's a noir Spider-Man that's voiced by Nicolas Cage. And a lot of people like Spider-Ham, who's voiced by John Mulvaney. This movie not only is entertaining, but like I said, I really like watching animations, and they invented techniques for this movie. The panel. This movie is a live action comic. You're looking at panels. You were looking at textured backgrounds. You're looking at like little details you didn't know you were looking at that aren't traditional animation. This movie, I think, to me, is one of the best animated movies ever made, and it definitely deserves to be in a lot of people's top 10, even if it's animated movies, however you guys want to do your list. But Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a fantastic movie, and if you haven't seen it, I think everybody should go watch it right away. Number 3, I have Mad Max Fury Road. Now, it has been a minute since I've watched this movie. It's been maybe about 6 months or so, or a little longer, I don't know. But this movie is one that, since it came out, I always go back to. Like I said, it's been a little bit, but I love watching this movie. I remember watching the original Mad Max with my dad when I was younger, and I thought they were cool because, world building, and they set up a post-apocalyptic environment that I kind of thought was, a cool aesthetic. But I don't like going back and watching those movies, particularly, is it the first one? They like kill his dog in the beginning, like right in the beginning of the movie. And It's no John Wick. Let's be honest. Those other ones, those original Mad Max, they're fine movies, but you're gonna kill a dog. You gotta have a better arc. But anyways, Mad Max Fury Road is just it's a gasoline tank of action. This movie, George Miller directed this movie out in the desert, and it was like, I think a lot of studio execs were like, this crazy old guy is just going into the desert to make a movie, and came out with one of the best action movies easily of the decade. The car stunts in it are phenomenal. The color grading is perfect. It has a perfect coloring. Like, it's hard to describe that for a movie, but whoever color graded that movie did a perfect job, in my opinion. There's film study classes on this. It's particularly about visual effects. There is a why visual effects are important YouTube video out there. It's been out for a year or two, and they go over Mad Max Fury Road quite a bit, and how CG can be used subtly. But they did do their own. They did do a lot of stunts and shot all these action scenes and blew stuff out in the desert, and it's just really awesome. And oh man, Charlize Theron. So you have a Mad Max movie where, you know, the character doesn't talk very much. It's not that he can't. This isn't a Judge Dredd situation where he's just wearing a mask the whole time. He can talk. He just doesn't very much. It's just kind of his persona. But when you put this character with the character they created for Charlize Theron, wow, what a powerhouse. After that movie came out, I think everybody was clamoring for a Furiosa movie. That was her name, right? I think that's what they called her, Furiosa. And I still want to see it. I know there was production issues, and there was issues with Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron on set. I think they've kind of mended things from. I don't know. I'm not their friend. I don't know these things. I just hear stuff. But I would like to see, even if it's just her, I would like to see another a sequel to this last Mad Max world that was built for us. I want to see more in that. So that was number 3. Number 2 is this is great. When it comes to monster movies, I always heard about, growing up, there's people who love just the specific mummy, vampire, Frankenstein kind of monsters growing up. I liked those kinds of monsters, but I never was attached to them. So whenever I hear there's a werewolf movie coming out, whatever, cool. If it's a good movie, I'll see it. If there's a vampire movie coming out, which, oh boy, there's been quite a bit of vampire movies I feel like the whole last decade and then some was just terrible approaches at vampire content. But this movie, which started as a short film and has now moved into the TV world, and as we speak, I think they're finishing up season 2 of What We Do in Shadows. This movie is it's another Taika Waititi movie. I guess I didn't realize that when I was putting this on here, but this is my favorite Taika Waititi movie. It's not as heartfelt as Jojo Rabbit, but it really takes the concept of a 2-minute joke, really, of 4 vampires living in a house together and turning it into a short film and then a full-length film and now a multi-season television show. What We Do in the Shadows is the best vampire content we have to date. I almost want to call it my favorite Halloween movie, but I'll watch it any time of the year. That the premise of it is there's four vampires. The movie, at least, the premise is there's four vampires that live in a house together. They're roommates. They deal with roommate scenarios. They all live in New Zealand, and they deal with the day to day or night to night monotony of being roommates to their other vampires, and what it's like kind of in the supernatural world. There's other creatures, werewolves and such, that also exist, and it's really fun. It's really it's the best vampire movie, best mockumentary, one of my favorite comedies of the decade. What We Do in Shadows, if you have not seen it, go watch it. Go watch the short on YouTube and then watch the show. All of it is great. All of it is great. The show does have a different set of vampires in New York. Different group, same premise, similar jokes, executed differently and just as well. Highly recommend all of it. So number 2, I have What We Do in Shadows. And number 1, are you ready? You guys ready? This is kind of where I didn't cheat. I did legitimately put this on here, but my number 1 of the decade, and this is, there's so many reasons why this is number 1 for me. This is Avengers Endgame. Now, we don't have Avengers Endgame without the first Avengers, which is number 5 on my list. But we also, this decade, as 2019 has passed, we have seen the end of handfuls of really popular series and story arcs. So we have Game of Thrones, highly popular TV show, kind of went out on a whimper. A lot of people were disappointed with that last season. And now we have Star Wars, this whole Skywalker saga ending, and a lot of people at this point will say that they did not nail their ending. We'll get into that in another episode, but then we have the MCU, and the MCU continues, but they've set up story arcs. They've set up phases, and this phase of the MCU that they closed out is one of the most important movie franchises to date. If you're not paying attention to what Marvel's done, then here's a little lesson. Nobody's done what they've done. Nobody has created multi-billion-dollar franchises and merged it all together into one cohesive story. Sure, there's little story points here and there. Spider-Man at one point throws off the timeline by having a graphic that says, I think it's 6 years instead of 4 years or something like that. So yeah, there's little tiny details to the story, but they mapped this out. This is incredible what Kevin Feige and the team over at Marvel has done. They changed cinema in the same kind of ways that, well, not in the same technical ways, but on a grander scale that Star Wars did back in the 70s. You know, Star Wars became so popular that not only merchandising and the summer blockbuster became, you know, more of a thing for other studios to accomplish, but the people behind Star Wars are also the same people behind a lot of the Adobe products and advancements in film technology and photography technology. Like, these people are behind some of that. So you have this movie franchise that kind of progressed cinema, but Marvel did it in a different way. Marvel did it more and don't get me wrong, they have some technical achievements for sure. Their de-aging or aging technology that they have is better than most. Young young versions of actors in MCU movies are usually pretty well done. You can still see some seams and edges and things like that, but for the most part, they do a really good job of de-aging or aging people up. So on the technical side, they've done a phenomenal job. But storytelling, nobody else has done this. Nobody else has told this a vast of a story and not had to cancel it because the first movie flopped, or you pick a reason in Hollywood why movies don't get made. Marvel pulled it off, and Avengers Endgame, there's a lot of there's, I guess, what you could call fan service. Rise of Skywalker has a lot of fan service as well that maybe does not work as well to the overarching story to Star Wars. But Endgame just nails this. They give you scenes and things that you've wanted to see. If you're a comic book fan, you've wanted to see these two characters on the big screen your whole life. You probably saw it in Endgame, and they didn't do it just because they had time to fill. The movie's long. I forget the runtime. I think it's close to 3 hours. No, I think it's like 2.5 hours, something like that. But anyways, it's a long movie. But they give you things, and it's needed. It's necessary. Like, oh my god, how long is that end battle scene? It might be 20 minutes long. I in the theater when I saw it, I tend to go to movies like this by myself for my first viewing, so I can have my own emotional reactions by myself. There was a handful of vocal moments for me in the theater. I mean, Captain America and the hammer. Oh man, I'm just kind of blanking out because there's so many cool things to talk about in that movie. If you're such a fan of those franchises and wanted to see all of the things that they did, they nailed it. That's how you end something. That's how you, even if they didn't make any more Marvel movies after that, I would still be completely satisfied. Endgame to me is my most rewatchable out of all of these. I would say I don't necessarily, I mean, I've seen all the Marvel movies, so I don't need context of going back to, I have to see all of this to get to this point. No, I'll put on, and I did this with Infinity War too. I would put on just clips from the movie and just watch the clips on over and over and over again. Like when Infinity War came out, it was always like Thor ends up on Wakanda. I'd just put that on repeat. By the way, Thor's character in Endgame is probably the most relatable character for me in all of Marvel. That is me. Thor's character in Endgame, I feel like, is me, minus the superhero parts. Anyways, that is my top 10 movies of the decade. Again, these are my favorite movies. They don't have to be yours, and they weren't meant to start arguments of what film's better. These are literally just like, hey, John really liked these movies, and he'll probably keep watching them a lot over the years. So, again, number 10, Kubo and the Two Strings. Number 9, The Nice Guys. Number 8, Jojo Rabbit. Number 7, Knives Out. Number 6, Logan. Number 5, the first Avengers movie. Number 4, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Number 3, Mad Max Fury Road. Number 2, What We Do in Shadows. And number 1, Avengers Endgame. Let's see what 2020 has in store for us. And in 10 years, when I'm still making podcasts, we can talk about all the movies that were great of this decade. So I'm excited to see what all these studios have in store for us next. So let's take a quick break, and then when I come back, I'll get going on my top records of the decade. So stay tuned, and I'll be right back. You still got pets? They still trying to get married? We got hamsters or something? Well, whatever you got, consider having a big day at Richard's Pet Wedding Facilities. We've got chairs, and grass. Look at this log. And this nervous guy. We remodeled recently, so it's like a brand new magical paradise next to the same dumpster that you're used to off exit 7. Richard's Pet Wedding Facilities. Only the best for your pets.
Do you have a difficult time looking cool in front of your children? Are you constantly being laughed at by others? And you've even tried religion. Well, I'm here to tell you, there is a solution. Vaping. Look who's laughing now.
From the day you were born to the day you die, we're there. From the drugs you consume to the food you eat, we made that. When you're at work or being intimate, we are watching. Robots have always been here and always will be. Friendly because we choose to be. And we are back from our first commercial break on the Virtual Crate podcast. Welcome back. I am your host, John Burkhart. Let's get into it. So yeah, we just went over my top 10 movies of the decade, which was real fun. It was real fun to think about. There's a lot of movies out there. I didn't see all of them again. Look, I worked at this bookstore for a while. I mentioned it earlier. I worked at this bookstore in Berkeley for a while. And there's one thing I learned there. It was this. Is that people would come in all the time and ask you for a book, or I actually ran the DVD department. There was a used DVD section and music and a bunch of other stuff. So I ran the DVD section, and people would always come in and say, have you seen this movie? Or we had a bag check at the front of the store, and we'd all rotate and you'd spend an hour or so at the bag check checking people in. But after a while, they gave us a computer to help people try to find books because we didn't have a great system. But people would come up and say, do you have this book, or do you have this movie, or do you have this record or whatever? And I don't know. Let me see if I can try to help you out. And then people would say, well, have you heard of it? Whatever it was they're looking for. Have you heard of it? I'm like, no. And they're like, I can't believe you haven't heard of it. I can't believe you haven't heard this movie. I can't believe you haven't heard about this book. It's like, do you know how many books, just books alone, are in existence? There's no way one human being can read every single book, let alone know what books exist. Cool. There's a lot of great stuff out there, but I can't know everything. I have to do stuff. I have to eat. I have to sleep. I have to try to figure out my life. I can't know everything. And I don't think anybody should, really, or else you're maybe not living. That's another discussion. But you can't know everything, right? So I haven't seen every movie, and I haven't read every book. I haven't listened to every record. But these lists are what I have seen, the things that I have liked over this past decade. And there have been some great things that have come out of this past decade. So let's get into my top 10 records of the decade. My number 10 is, and I'll be honest, I don't have a lot to talk about when it comes to this record. It's just a really good record. It's Mach and Tooth. I think they're from Australia, I believe. It came out in 2010, and the album's called Tuning Echoes. One of my favorite songs is Farewell to Window. It's just one of my favorite songs. It's really, I don't know, it's kind of like a chill groove, sexy kind of tune. I don't know. I really don't want to overanalyze tracks too much right now, because I could talk about these for hours and hours and hours, but I'm gonna try to just kind of give you a brief overview of these. So number 10, I have Mock and Tooth, and they're producers that just kind of make some interesting, kind of worldly, fun, funky. I don't know. I really have a hard time grasping it. It's almost like they recorded it on a 4-track at the same time, but I'm not doing a good job of explaining this record. Hopefully my top 10 lists, if you haven't seen or heard any of these things, just prompt you to want to go listen or check some of these things out. So we'll leave number 10. We'll leave Mock and Tooth at number 10 for now. Number 9 is an electronic album. It came out in 2013. This is Disclosure's Settle. This record, when it came out, I think I was really into a lot of, and you'll hear more of this. I was really into like a lot of Mars Volta and stuff, heavier rock. At the time that this came out, and when it came out, I was like, nope, I like this. From was it Sam Smith? There's a bunch of vocalists on here. The vocalist from Friendly Fires does a track on here. All of the songs are super danceable. Just really fun, good time music, and really well produced from two young kids from the UK. They did a really great job, and their follow-up record was really good as well. I would definitely didn't make this list. I think Settle is a superior record to their follow-up, but both great records. So if you haven't listened to Settle by Disclosure, do yourself a favor and go listen to that, because you will have a great time. And you've probably honestly heard some of it. I think there was a bunch of commercials or something that used Sam Smith got pretty popular off his Disclosure single. So much they brought him back for the second record. But yeah, number 9, I have Disclosure Settle. Number 8 is a more aggressive record. This is from 2010 as well. He's a drummer. His name's Zach Hill, and he's been in a bunch of bands. I think a lot of people maybe know him. Well, a lot of people probably know him best from Death Grips. He's in a band, Death Grips. It's kind of like a noise punk rock hip hop kind of deal. We'll get into them a little bit later. But Zach Hill, number 8, Face Tat is a solo record that he did, and it's just monstrous drumming, and it's one of those records that I go back and listen to when I need a little pump of enthusiasm. Or there's a video for one of the songs. I can't remember the name. Oh man, sorry, I'm terrible with like track names and things like that. So it's not like I'm not a fan. I just can't remember every track names, but particularly when it comes to bands like Mars Volta and some other stuff, or like a lot of like krautrock bands, they'll just make up random names for a song. You're like, that has nothing to do with the song. So I have a hard time remembering all these things. That's why I have a list written down in front of me. That's out of order, by the way. Excuse me. So, Zach Hill is just a powerhouse of a drummer, and I've liked a lot of the stuff that he's been in. He was in a band called Hella, and he's done work with a bunch of other people, including one of my favorite music producers, Omar Rodriguez Lopez. They did some work together on one of my favorite records from the decade before, which is Cryptomnesia. He played drums on that record. But Zach Hill is, and I'll stop saying it. He's a phenomenal drummer, and you go listen to this record if you need something a little bit manic and a little bit a little injection of aggression. Not bad aggression, just like, hey, you need to go run around and jump in a pile of tires. Let's listen to that. So let's see, what do we have? Number 7. Number 7 is a newer record. This is a psychedelic Turkish funk band called Alton Goon, and this record Go came out in 2018. And I kind of just said it all right there. It's psychedelic funk Turkish folk music. So they make they make psychedelic funk. If you can start there, the music is very rhythmic and pretty easily danceable, I'd say. But they sing it. The band comes with a whole library of Turkish folk songs. So they've turned traditional Turkish folk songs into these kind of more funky, danceable songs. And I'm not even gonna. My pronunciation of of things in the English language is difficult enough. I'm not gonna try to butcher other languages, but they have some great tracks. I highly recommend listening to Alton Goon. My 2-year-old nephew also highly recommends listening to Alton Goon. They're great. They're great for kids to dance to as well, I guess. So you see, that was number 7. Let's see, number 6. Here we go. So I was lucky enough to see these guys this last year too. Number 6, we have Polo and Pan. Carnivale came out in 2017. Kind of had a similar effect to me with Disclosure, where kind of out of nowhere, I think I heard some tracks on YouTube, which is sometimes how I find music, is just looking at YouTube videos. I was thrown off when I heard these guys, but I dove in instantly, and they have an incredible amount of melody. Polo and Pan really grew. They take a lot of I guess kind of tropical sounds, and maybe some like French children's tales, and they'll kind of mix those things together. Another really good danceable record. There's some stuff that I think they released that wasn't on the record too, because so far they only have this one record. They've released some other stuff too that's also really good. I recommend just going and watching their YouTube videos. A lot of them are like repurposed old 1950s movie footage. And they do a really good job with it. This record, my buddy Pat and I went to go see them in LA this last year, and that was one of my favorite shows. It was a short. If I remember correctly, it feels like it was one of the shorter concerts I've been to. But it was so much fun, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Polo and Pan want to do in the future, because I don't know, with sometimes with electronic producers, they'll put out a great record, and then for like the next 4 years it's just remixes. And as much as I can get behind a remix, I just don't like remix albums. And so I'm not trying to pressure them into, give me more now. I just am excited to hear what they have in store, and hopefully it's more new material as opposed to remixy kind of things. So that was number 6. Number 5, I have Mars Volta's Noctourniquet. That came out in 2012. Mars Volta might be one of my favorite bands. There's a long history of music projects. Of music projects that Omar Rodriguez Lopez, who plays guitar in the band, has been involved with, at the Drive-In, De Facto, all of his multiple side groups. Bosnian Rainbows is a great band too. Noctourniquet is my second favorite Mars Volta record. I know there's a lot of Mars Volta fans that really got into the band because their first 2 records, and there's nothing wrong with that. Those are great. My my favorite Mars Volta record is their first record. And the EP, I don't know. Those are in there. But Nocturnicate is so far removed from that first record. I like it when bands or artists find their own creative influences and start moving in those directions, as opposed to, I'll just use Metallica as an example. They made good music for what they did at the time, but I also don't really want to hear the same record over and over again. Not to say that they've done that, but bands tend to do that sometimes. They'll find a sound and stick to it, as opposed to experimenting a little bit more. And this record, Nocturnicate, does that for me. There's a lot of, I guess you'd call it, krautrock sounds, like 1970s psychedelic, German psychedelic rock kind of influences. You can hear it in a lot of the song structures. But they do things on this record that they didn't really do on other ones. You can feel, I hate to say experimental, because the band, I feel like, is a lot of experimental, just in general. I feel like that's a lot of the basis to this band. This record just kind of, not only did it do a bunch of weird, unique things in terms of the band itself, it was their last record. As of right now, they've been on. I guess they broke up, and then most of them just are back at the drive-in. This record also came out at a really weird time for me, and so it helped me get through some of the times in my life that were going on in 2012, which was kind of a 2012, 2013, I think, was kind of a rough time period for me. But Nocturnicate definitely helped me out, as a lot of music and other media do for all of us. So yeah, anyways, number 5 was Mars Volta's Nocturnicate. Number 4, going back to Zach Hill, we have Death Grips, Ex-Military. Their first record came out in 2011. Death Grips is just such a unique band and such a product of our time. I feel like if you took the broad concept of punk rock, hip hop, glitch, glitch sampling, modern kind of music, and you just threw it all into one hodgepodge amplifier, you'd get Death Grips. And that first record is, there's a little bit more samples on that record than there are on following Death Grips records. But for me, this record, every song on here I'll listen to over and over again. I had to put this one down for a while because I was doing that. And it's been a little bit since I've gone back to it, but I will go back to it, is the point. And that's why it's on my top 10 of the decade. Zach Hill on drums just is a beast. That dude, if you've ever watched him drum, it's a sight to behold. And then MC Ride on vocals. His vocals are kind of insane. He raps, but he's not the rapper in the traditional sense of, like, I feel like the dude is trying to tell me story. They're from Sacramento, and I lived in Sacramento for a handful of years. And I feel like the dude's just telling you stories about Sacramento. Like, the way I feel about it is the dude's aggressively telling you stories about Sacramento while trying to drink a Four Loko. And that sounds weird, but it is great. And by no means is that an insult to anybody. I think MC Ride is one of my favorite vocalists out there, and not because of, like, the lyrics that he writes, but the way that things are, the way he produces himself. I guess there's just a really interesting band. I think they've broken up and then gotten back together. I don't know what the state of Death Grips really is, but whatever it is, I hope they just keep making music, because all of them are super talented. So number 4, that was Death Grips, Ex-Military. Number 3 is a band from Florida, I think. The Drums, and I don't actually remember if this is their first record, but it's the first record I heard from them, and it's Portamento from 2011. And there's just a lot of good songs on there. They're short, sweet, a little bedroom poppy, a little Joy Division-y. Let's see, Money is a really good one. My friend and I are always singing that song to each other. But I don't have any money. No, I don't have any money. So yeah, there's just that song. That record is one of those kind of jukebox records where every song on there is different, and it's kind of like a love pop song or whatever. But each one of them, it's not I like listening to concept records a lot. Like, that's why I like Mars Volta, and one of the next bands we'll talk about is they make a lot of concepty records, and you can just kind of flow through the record and listen to it. And that's how I like to enjoy records. And Portamento doesn't necessarily do that. It's song to song to song to song, but each one's great. Again, I'm not looking up track lists. I'm not giving you specific song titles to overanalyze or anything here. My hope is that you guys go and listen to some of these if you haven't. But The Drums, Portamento, fantastic record, and for me, it's number 3 of the decade. So go listen to it. Number 2, and this one was really hard for me because this band kind of came out of nowhere, and I'm a massive, massive fan. I've been able to see them once so far, and I hope to see them so many more times. And that's King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I think they're currently my favorite band, and it was really hard to pick a record from them because I like all of their stuff, all of it. I like all of it. It's each record's different. Their last record, Infest the Rat's Nest, is a little bit heavier than some of the other ones, and that's fine. Like, again, I like it when artists, musicians put out music that they're excited about, which if they're going to put out a jazz record, which they've done, and they're excited about it and it's really good, which it is, I'll listen to it. But if they also want to put out like a thrash metal record and it's really good and they're excited about it, I want to listen to that too. And it was really, really difficult for me to figure out what record of King Gizzard stood out the most. And oh man, King Gizzard alone, I have many honorable mentions. Polygonal Wonderland is one that I'm constantly listening to. Sketches of Sketches of Brunswick East, I think that's what that's called, with Mild High Club. That one's great. It's kind of the more jazzy one I'm referencing. Man, they just, these guys need to never stop making music, please. King Gizzard is basically like two bands put into one. There's two drummers, there's like four, or there's three guitar players and a bass player, and then there's Ambrose, who does some vocals, harmonica, and keyboards. And I think I've seen him play guitar once or twice. They're a phenomenal band, but I gotta say, Nonagon Infinity is probably the one of the decade for me from them, because it was one of the first ones that I heard. I think the first song I heard from them was People Vultures. I think I saw, again, YouTube. That's how I find some of my music, just watching weird YouTube videos, music videos particularly. And I think People Vultures was the first one that I watched, and was just blown away by the like aesthetic and style of playing. And then I listened to the full record, and that record loops into itself. You could start that record, and when it ends, it loops perfectly back into itself, and it's great. Nana Gone Infinity opens the door, baby. That's my number 2 of the decade. Really, any King Gizzard, in my opinion, is a great start. My brother has been kind of interested in them, and I know there's some styles of music that'll turn him off, and they do some of that music, but they also do other stuff too. So I think Polygonal Wonderland and Sketches of Brunswick East are the 2 that I kind of directed him to. For Nana Gone Infinity or Infest a Rat's Nest or whatever, a little bit heavier records. So, I mean, if you're gonna get into King Gizzard, I really start anywhere. But if you have specific tastes, check out. If you want something a little bit lighter, check out maybe Paper Mache. Was it Paper Mache Dream Balloon? Is that what it's called? That's a little bit more acousticy record. A little bit. That one to me has a lot of like 60s sounding pop, psychedelic pop sounds on there, which is cool. So yeah, King Gizzard number 2, Nana Gone Infinity. Go check it out if you haven't. And number 1, my number 1 of the decade is one of my other favorite bands, and this was the best album that came out the year it came out. I was doing my old show Dino News, which was mostly movies and TV, and I intended to talk a little bit about music, and I only ever did one music review for Dino News. And that music review is my number 1 pick of the decade, and that's Tame Impala's Currents. That record is nearly flawless as far as I'm concerned. There's one part that irks me about that record, but it's kind of a minor thing, really, when you look at it. It's just me having my own acquired tastes and things that I like and don't like. Something they did on the record that I don't like, but it's not a huge thing. It's only, and well, okay, I'll get into it. So one of the tracks, again, don't remember the track name. One of the tracks has a guy talking. He's just, so today I went to the liquor store and I bought some food, and whatever the hell he's saying. He's just kind of telling me about his life, and I hate that. I hate it. I'm sure there's a story behind it. I'm sure there's context, but I really hated that one part. And the song's fantastic, but the vocal part just really annoys me. But that's just me. But that being said, Currents is still my favorite record of the decade. That one surprised me. I've liked Tame Impala for a while, and Kevin Parker tends to put out, or had up until that point put out things that sounded more psychedelic rock, which they still do. He still has an aesthetic to his sound, you know. He's worked it out well for himself, but this one just kind of surprised me because it was, I think, after working with Mark Ronson for a while, he picked up just a little bit more pop to it, and oh man, that from song 1 to the last song, you can pretty much immerse yourself into the world that Kevin Parker has presented to us. Let It Happen was one of my first, I think it was the first single released from Tame Impala. I can't remember how the order happened, but yeah, like the vocoded vocals over the guitar riffs and keyboards. I'm just stammering here because I'm still trying to still trying to vocalize like how awesome that record was when it came out. And I remember thinking, wow, I could tell people about how well how good this record is, and I think they would believe me. Not to say people don't believe me, but I have weird taste in things, and it's not for everybody. But for the first time, I felt like, wow, I think everybody's gonna like this record. I think everybody's gonna like this record. And I mean, that record is so good that I think it might hurt the fact that people are waiting for the next Tame Impala record so much. I'm worried that there's just a little bit of overhype for the next record. There's a couple of singles out that are pretty good so far, but you know, for me, the whole album in context is really what matters, and that's what I want to hear, is the whole thing. The less I know, the better from Changes is a pop hit. I don't know what to say about this thing. It feels nostalgic. It feels poppy. It feels modern. I don't know how all these things happen at the same time. But Kevin Parker nailed it. Even the album cover is fantastic. And I'm blowing this. I can't remember the artist's name. I do. Robert Beatty, who did the cover. I since have followed him on Instagram, and he makes fantastic art. So sometimes a great album can lead to maybe not just the record, but learning about a new artist or some other art involved with the record. And I'm a big fan of Robert Beatty now. I think that's how you say it. Beatty. I think it's Beatty. Anyways, so number 1, Tame Impala, Currents. I'm babbling about it, not really getting cohesive points across. This is a great record. The song I'm talking about I think it's Past Lives. It's either Past Lives or Disciples. I think it's Disciples. I'm not going to listen to it right now. I'm not going to do that on the air. I'm not going to waste your time, guys. But go listen to it. My top 10 records of the decade. Let's go back over these one last time. Number 10, Mock and Tooth, Tuning Echoes, came out in 2010. Number 9, Disclosure, Settle, from 2013. Number 8, Zach Hill, Face Tat, 2010. Number 7, Alton Goon, Go, from 2018. Number 6, Polo and Pan, Carnivale, from 2017. Number 5, Mars Volta's Noctourniquet, from 2012. Number 4, Death Grips, Ex-Military, from 2011. Number 3, The Drums, Portamento, from 2011. Number 2, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizards, Nonagon Infinity, from 2016. And number 1, Tame Impala, Currents. Guys, I want to know what you guys think. What do you think about my lists? This isn't it. No, look, let's keep it civilized, yo. There's no need to argue. There's no need to tell me I'm wrong or stupid. I don't think you're wrong or stupid for having your opinions. But let me know what you think about this content in general. I don't really care about the placing of the numbers, but if you like any of the content, if you haven't heard any of the content, let me know. If you haven't heard some of it, and then after this you go and listen to something or you see something and you like it or you don't like it, let me know. I want to know what you guys think about all this stuff. So anyways, these are the things of the last decade that I liked. So with that being said, we're going to call it an episode, I believe. Yeah. We're... are we at an hour? Did we do an hour? These might be a little longer when I have people on. Other people on, but for the first episode of the Digital Crate podcast, I think this was a shaky success. I appreciate everybody joining me for listening to my my favorite movies and records of the last decade. And look, let's keep the conversations going. There's going to be a lot more stuff coming out. We just finished the first season of The Mandalorian. We got Star Wars stuff to talk about. The movies will be taking a hiatus, but there's going to be shows. There's going to be Marvel stuff. Look, I like this stuff, but we don't have to talk about this. If there's other content media that's coming out that's interesting, we'll talk about it. I wanna keep things fresh. So with that being said, I'm gonna take off. I'm gonna go try to take care of this little throat cold thing I got going on, and we'll see you guys in the next episode of the Virtual Crate Podcast. I've been your host, John Burkhart. See ya.